Welcome to Holly's Pandorium, featuring your host, psychic medium Holly Jordan.
Hi there, we're back. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. I have a very special guest today. This is Aine Sullivan. Hello, Aine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. I understand that there's a lot that you do in the pagan community, but also in the paranormal. So
Yes.
our listeners are very excited to hear about a special paranormal experience that you had. And then we'd love to know what else you do.
Okay. Well, one of the most memorable ghost stories, I was about 9. And we lived in Southern California, so I was 9. I can't really tell you what season it was because it was
Gotcha.
always warm and it was
Right.
always sunny outside,
Oh,
you
sure.
know.
Yeah.
I can tell you it was back in the 70s because that's when I was about this age.
Okay.
Because I was born in 69. So, but we were at my dad's friend's house and there was a little girl spirit there. And I don't remember her name, but she was talking to me. Her and I were like at one point I went down to the kitchen and I said to the lady that lived there, I'm like, "Where's your little girl?" And she was like, "What are you talking about? I only have boys." You know,
Oh,
she only
my.
had sons.
Oh,
And I
wow.
kept asking her about the little blonde girl.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, "There is no little blonde girl here." And so then I guess they did some research and found out that a little girl died at that house.
Whoa.
And so I was actually interacting with this little girl. Now,
Sure.
my mom believed me.
Right.
My mom, I was very lucky. My mom knew I was a medium since I was
Nice.
very young. And
Nice.
she was like, "Just tell me what you see. Tell me what she's saying," and all that other stuff. Well, the other family didn't really believe in ghosts.
Right.
And so when they signed a birthday card for me, they signed it from the little girl, but I picked it up. And the minute I touched it, I looked at him and I went, "Who signed this for them, for the girl?" And the mom's face went white. And I turned around and I looked at her and I'm like, "She's not really happy you signed her name. You didn't give her enough time. She would have signed it herself."
Oh.
They moved about a year later. Another one that happened about when I was 16. Now, luckily for me, my mother had prayed over me and talked to her. She works with angels a lot. My mom does. I don't work with angels as much. I'm not used to those entities. I'm used to other entities, but not angels.
Right.
But I guess my mom told me as later when I was an adult that she had done a prayer over me for the Archangel Michael, that the dead would only come to me in their non-dead form.
Okay.
Because I guess when I was 2 or 3, I was waking up because, eyeball out, eviscerated,
Yes.
guts hanging out. And
Right.
my mom was like, "Look, if you guys want to talk to her, that's fine, but you can't come to her like this. She's too young for that."
Right.
And so my mom prayed over me and did
Good for her.
her stuff.
Nice.
And but I remember when it wore off. It wore off when I was 16. And I had a person who had gotten into a car accident come into my room and want to talk to me and needed help.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was a bad car accident, like missing limbs, things falling out of their body.
Sure.
But because it was such a recent trauma, because it had happened within the last 48 hours, because it was a recent trauma, this being had no idea how to change their outward appearance. They didn't even recognize they had passed yet.
Okay.
That was uber scary to me. Half of their face was missing. They had no hair. They looked like they had been scalped by the First Nations people from history. It was a bad accident.
Sounds like it.
That one scared me the worst because it was the first time that anybody came to me fully in their death state.
Wow.
And because my mom had done so much to train me to not do that, when it happened, it was very unnerving.
Sure.
I still do get startled though with paranormal stuff. I've seen things float in the air. I do remediation with Ouija boards. So when a person has used a Ouija board improperly and something has gotten through the Ouija board that shouldn't have gotten through the Ouija board. I go in and remediate. I take care of the board. So I've seen things floating in the sky, floating in the air, in the room. I've seen doors slam. I've walked into a room and watched lights flicker. And that could be me when I'm in a bad mood. I've been known to make lights flicker. Or when I'm really excited, I've been known to make lights flicker. But I do have 2 family members who have passed over, and they come and visit me often.
Nice.
And they like to jump out of things that the people should not be out, like the washer. Like all of a sudden I'll open it and my uncle will go, surprise! And I'll be like, Uncle Frank,
That's
I'm going to hurt you. You know, but my uncles also learned very quickly that not to startle me too much, because if they do scare me too often, I will confine them in my walls.
Yeah.
I basically ground them for
Right.
30 days. One of my uncles, my middle uncle, I have an older uncle and a middle uncle. The middle uncle died and passed on way before the older one did.
Okay.
And I had to lock him in the wall for 30 days because he kept jumping out and scaring me, and I dropped stuff, spilled stuff. Making a mess. I was not happy with my uncle about it. And I'm like, Frankie, you need to stop. And he's like, haha, you can't stop me from this. He had no idea what I could do at this time.
Right.
And so I did. I basically locked him in my wall for 30 days. And so when my older uncle passed away, of course, he came and visited me because his brother was with me.
Sure.
And he's like, watch this. And Frank's like, don't do it. You don't want to do that. Don't do that.
Funny.
Don't startle her. She doesn't like when you do that.
Right.
So really it just, it depends on their mood. But even my Uncle Frank told my other uncle, don't do that. She'll lock you and she'll ground you.
Yeah.
He's serious. When she says she's grounding you, you can't go through the walls for 30 days. You can go anywhere else you want. But if you come to see her, you will be stuck in between insulation.
Oh, funny.
All time. Because I have them in the wall because you can't come in. If you can't behave and follow my rules, you can't come in my home.
That's hilarious.
But I will tell you this, now he'll put his hand out and go like this. I'm like, yes, I see you. And then he'll come out. Hi, I'm here.
Nice.
So,
well, that's good. You've got him trained. That's good.
You got to talk to him. Ghosts and entities are no different than other things. They have to have boundaries.
Yes.
They have to know what the rules are. Like the last time one of my uncles made a mess, I said, next time you make the mess, you better come up with enough money for a quarter of the rent, Frank.
Yeah.
I haven't had a mess in my kitchen since.
Yeah, good.
Oh, you know, so, but this is paranormal is something that I've lived with all my life. And I never even realized, I thought everybody had these same problems I do.
Right.
And I thought that all of my life until I got older and I started getting out in the real world and realizing that not everybody could see like I could. I thought everybody could see the same way I could. I didn't know other people couldn't see them. My mom taught me as I got older, in school and stuff, don't talk to the nuns. Don't talk to the priests. They don't understand.
Right.
Don't say you're hearing voices. That could be, So, those were the basic stuff I learned. But as far as really grappling with spirits, my mother is psychic and so is my father.
Wow.
So I think they were first generation indigo children, and I think I'm second generation indigo.
Interesting. Nice. Very cool.
Yeah. So paranormal is part of it. I go on ghost hunts with my friends. I have, unfortunately, and I'm hoping one day to be invited to a formal investigation.
Yeah.
I like Sarah Lemos. I try and bring it in and do the good work and then just, go out. And so, So
let me ask you this. Let me go back to when the story began and you were a small person and you had the fortune of having a receptive parent, which is a huge blessing.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I did too, thank heavens. Now, my mom was a
Mhm.
little psychic, but was extremely open to psychic things because she grew up living in a home with two generations of parents. She had her parents and grandparents, and her grandfather was a medium and had
Mm,
seances every week in Chicago in the 20s and 30s. So she grew up with
nice.
that.
Right.
Yeah, so that was she was open to that. Numerology, astrology, all kinds of, palm reading, all these things were all discussed and fine. But for somebody, and you've met plenty, and I have met plenty, that
Yes.
it's something that maybe you've gone to a psychic once or twice, or maybe you've read astrology in the newspaper, or maybe you've watched a ghost program or a movie about ghosts, but it doesn't really seem very real. And then something happens and it's real to you. What would you
Mhm.
say to someone to encourage them to talk about what they see or feel or smell or hear? What would you say?
A lot of us want to make it a coincidence.
Yes,
Because in our head, if it's a coincidence, it's not something supernatural. Therefore, it is less scary.
correct.
When in all actuality, most of the time, the reason you're being scared is because you don't understand they're trying to communicate with you.
Agreed. I agree
Um,
100%.
but again, even as a psychic medium, I could be in an abandoned house with my friends and hear hey and know that we're all female here. Why am I hearing a male voice?
Right.
Type of thing. But yeah, no, I was extraordinary. And again, I thought all parents were as supportive as mine were. And
Right.
I
Right.
found out later, no, not so much.
Yeah.
So for me, I just really, I learned who I could talk about it to. I find that because I work in a metaphysical shop, because my
Yeah.
apothecary is located inside of If the Broom Fits, a
Okay.
lot of people will walk in here
Yeah.
and they know they can just blurt out, I'm really having problems with a ghost. And all of the people who work here, most of them will go, oh, you need to talk to Anya.
Yeah.
Because I do ghost removals, I do
Yeah.
house blessings, I
Right.
do exorcisms of entities and removals of entities. We don't necessarily call them exorcism in pagan
Right.
community. That's
Right.
more of
Right.
a Christian idea.
Right.
And so I will have people come in and just like, I think I have a ghost. Okay, well, why don't you talk to me? And I have a checklist. Let's go down our checklist.
Yeah.
Are you
That's
being
great.
haunted?
Right.
Type of checklist. I've seen skeptics having their minds changed just simply by being around me and watching things happen.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
I've also seen skeptics get changed when something, moves across the table
Right. Right.
while they're watching it, and I'm like, my hands are up here.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you must have a string. And I'm like, where?
Right.
Um, Houdini, I am not. I do not do sleight of trick at all. I can't even do the whole quarter out of the ear without giving up
Right.
because I'll drop the quarter. Okay.
Right. Right.
So for me, it's, I learned one of the first things my mom taught me and my dad as well is to look at the scientific part of it. Is there a
Okay.
window open? Is there a wind blowing?
Right.
Is there a door open? Is there any strings? Look for, maybe somebody's pulling a prank.
Right.
So my parents taught me first to look at the scientific evidence to see if I could,
Debunk things.
thank you, that was the word I want, debunk. So that I could debunk it and prove, okay, well, maybe, this window's open and the door
Right.
kind of is hanging on an angle, so the wind shut it. So
Right.
when paranormal stuff does happen with me, I can see if a ghost is doing it. So I have less, if I have another person in the room who's more of a skeptic, we'll go through the check like, okay, are the windows open? No. Is the air conditioner on? No. Is the heater on? No. Is there any air blowing? No. Then why is that paper moving?
Right. That's wonderful, though. And I appreciate that because I think I've done enough research into psychic things because I've been psychic since I was a child, just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of shocked, but not really surprised that the very first movie that represented psychic work in a positive light was in 1981 with Whoopi Goldberg as the psychic in Ghost.
Yes.
That's the first time. And so even though there was a spiritual community that was vast and wide after the Civil War and World War I, people were reeling. There were, for those that are listening that don't know this or haven't really paid attention to history that much, I'm here to tell you guys that even World War II and Vietnam combined did not have the death toll that World War I did. People were reeling in the 1920s and even in the 30s before World War II ever began from the loss of death. There was so much loss, so much grief. Well, and so spiritualists kind of blossomed. There were psychics everywhere. And yes, there were charlatans, but there were also people that were legitimate, helping spirits to move on, helping families to connect with loved ones and to have some closure and to have some relief, because grief was abundant. It was enormous, and it was all over.
It also, spiritual movement also happened even before World War I with the Civil War.
Yes.
Spiritualism became very big right after the Civil War because there were people who lost their entire family.
Yes. Yes.
You'll find that after every big, like just recently with COVID. Okay, yes. We just came out of the 3 years of losing a tremendous number of people to COVID. We had another big spiritualism movement.
Yes. Well, so, it gets in touch with our humanity, I think, because we all grow up not thinking about we're all going to have a toe tag someday. That's not part of our daily lives. It's something we face eventually, but we don't really think about it much. And I get that. Life keeps us busy. We don't focus on dying. And it's definitely something that can be very jarring, especially like when I've done readings or when I do seances, and I know you can totally relate to this, how many times the spirits will come up to me and say, I woke up dead.
Yeah.
I woke up dead. Yeah.
Yeah. One of mine is, well, the last thing I remember was insert something here, driving the car, lifting weights, helping mom, whatever it was. Why won't anybody talk to me?
Right. What's happening?
And normally my response is, honey, I'm so sorry, but you've moved on. You no longer have a body.
Right.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I have a very close friend whose 14-year-old nephew unfortunately was involved in gangs and got shot.
Oh, sad.
And when he first got unalived, she called me with check in with him because there had been a rumor.
Right.
And I came back with, sweetie, no, I'm sorry. The confusion that his soul was in, I knew.
Yeah.
And his life had ended with that shot. And so, sometimes there's severe confusion and they're like, I'm dizzy and my head's bleeding. Well, that's not really your head, honey. Yeah. Because you no longer have a body.
Yeah.
So there is some talk about and some communication with them to, I've met recalcitrant spirits who just do not want to go into any phase other than what they are because, but I wasn't necessarily a good person. Well, but you can't move on, dude. And the longer you stay here, the worse you're going to get.
Right.
Because if you don't know how to live on this plane as a spirit, you're going to become resentful and nasty. And that's when you become, the haunted spirit that everybody makes bad movies about.
Right. So the ghosts, I have some, I guess I could call them buddy ghosts that like to hang out. And they actually taught me a new phrase this year that I find or maybe it was last year. They like to be called the living adjacent.
Okay.
And I thought, I like that. I understand that because they're still alive. Because I have some of them get very angry and say, I'm not dead. I am alive. I just don't have a body, but I'm not dead.
I hear too. I'm just unliving,
Right.
non-living,
Right.
unliving, non-living.
Yep.
You know, I'm like, oh,
Okay.
it's like your pronoun. You tell me what your pronoun is, I'll do my best to
Exactly.
remember that pronoun
Exactly.
and use it to honor you. And that's the
Yeah.
way I am with the unliving, or, you know, the uncrossed, or, you know, and I let them identify. Like, I've had one woman come to me, go, I'm not crossing. So
Yep.
we sat down and talked. I'm like, well, tell me why you aren't
Right.
crossing, you know.
Right.
And by the time the discussion was over, her family was coming to the light, and she could feel the love, and she
Oh, I
chose
love it.
to become a crossed soul. Is she goes,
Nice.
I'm crossed, as she's, you
Yeah.
know, going through the
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
it depends on the person.
Absolutely. I had a young man show up at my last seance, and he didn't want to show me his face. He just wanted me to look at his tennis shoes because they were the
Yep.
last thing his mom gave him in the 80s. And
Mhm.
he shared with me that on his 18th birthday, he had a great day, but the entire year after his 18th birthday to get to his, or from his 17th birthday to his 18th birthday, sorry, he got slammed with adult life things. His mom died. He got health issues, and then he died. And so the series of events that transpired in that 1 year jarred him and upset him so bad that he said he never wanted to pass on because he didn't want to come back in a body and do it again. Because he said being a kid was beautiful and amazing and lovely, and being an adult is terrifying. And his dad, unfortunately, was reeling his mother's passing and didn't handle it well. I'm just going to put it that way. And so here's this kid brain, you know, going, I was focused on basketball, and I was focused on high school, and my mom and I talked about college, and she was the rock. She was the one that kept everybody functioning, and that went away, and it just jarred him to the bone. He just said, he said, maybe someday, but he said, I just want to stay right where I am right now. I have my favorite shoes on from my mom, and I like just watching things from here, and it feels safe, and this is where I want to stay. And it was I was sad. It was bittersweet, but I understood. I mean, what he said made complete sense. Yeah.
Well, and it's also an indictment of America.
Yes. Yes.
Well, don't treat children like adults. Don't teach them how to be an adult. Let them enjoy childhood. But then when they get to adulthood, it's a jarring thing.
Yes.
Whereas we followed other cultures where we slowly started getting them into the adult life at the early teenagedom instead of, you know,
surprise, you're a grown up.
yeah, it's not a sink or swim. It's not a, oh, well, we're going to throw you in the deep end, and if you swim, great, and if not, you're going to drown and die.
Right.
That's not how we should be working it.
Right.
But I have heard many stories of once the rock of the family, and usually it's the matriarch of the family. Once they leave, there's a mass exodus sometimes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So I've had one with several children where when the mom passed from breast cancer, within 3 years, 4 of her 5 children had passed as well.
Wow.
If not from addiction or an accident.
Wow.
It was a disease in and of itself that, you know, that mirrored mom's disease or whatever.
Wow.
But sometimes that can happen.
Yeah. So Aine, I want to bring the conversation to focus in on the work that you do.
Okay.
Can you share with our listeners that have never met you before?
Sure.
What it is that you offer to the public and what it is that you try to do in your day-to-day living?
Excuse me, of course. Everyday living. Our mission statement for my company is making the everyday witch's life easier through serendipitous witchery. Okay. So basically what we do is we try to offer things that witches will need. Like, for example, potions made of essential oil. So when I first started this line, it was because I started teaching Witchcraft 101.
Okay.
And when people start learning about witchcraft, they open up that third eye. And when they
Right.
open up that third eye, that's when all those other spirits start coming to you because, oh, you can see me. We can communicate.
Right. Right.
So I started making essential oils to make protection and stuff like that. And it just kind of blossomed from there.
Right.
So I do make custom potions for people. I've had people who are in big public rituals come to me with, we need anointing oils. This is the goddess. This is the basics of the,
Right.
the ritual. Make us an oil so we can anoint everybody going in. Oh, okay,
Right.
I got it.
Okay.
You know? I also make what I call gem elixirs. No alcohol.
I was going to say, what is that?
Everybody thinks because it says elixir, it's an alcohol. I call
Right.
it an elixir because there is more than one vibrational water.
Ah.
So in my apothecary, I have 250 of these little dropper bottles. Each individual one is a singular stone.
Okay.
So there are some stones that can't be put in water. Like, for example, malachite. Malachite is not one that does well with water because it is made of copper.
Okay.
So some malachites can become toxic if they get wet.
Okay.
Or they can explode if they get wet.
Yikes.
For example, selenite melts if you get it wet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So in ritual space, what we do is we take every stone that we have, and again, I have about 250 up on my apothecary wall. And in ritual space, we imbue the stone's metaphysical property, the vibration and the megahertz of the stone into the molecules of the water.
Okay.
So then for our anxiety potion, for example, our anxiety gem elixir, there's anywhere between 30 and 50 different stone waters that have all been mixed together.
Okay.
And then I use different moon waters depending on what you're looking for. So for example, for anxiety, I use new moon water because as it goes from the new moon to the full moon, the anxiety is going to go away and the strength is going to
balance
be grown. Okay.
Okay.
If the person has really bad anxiety, I might do full moon water because then it's going to reduce the anxiety the person has.
Gotcha.
So everything's custom made here. We also do, everything is all natural. We try to make sure that they're sustainable.
Gotcha.
I am a witch for hire, so I do Wiccanings, which is pagan christening or a witchcraft dedication to a god or goddess of a child.
Okay.
I do hand fastings. I do end of life. I do cord cuttings. I'm basically a witch for hire.
Gotcha.
I don't necessarily sell spells in my store, and the reason why is because the owner of If the Brim Fits has her own spell bags.
Gotcha.
So we don't compete with each other, but I have had people come to me for a magical mentoring appointment where they say, okay, I'm going to do this spell for this. Can you help me?
Gotcha.
We'll use my correspondence books. We'll use all of my reference material that we have to come up with a spell that the person feels comfortable with. And a lot of times it's a novice witch. A lot of people come to me saying, I'm a baby witch. Okay. My 2.5-year-old grandbaby is a baby witch.
Right.
You are a novice. Your life experience counts for something.
Right.
You're not a baby. You're a novice. You're new at this specific thing. But let's not discount the rest of your life experience, okay?
Gotcha.
So when I have novice witches come in and asking me questions, that's more like a magical mentoring. I do that. I also teach Witchcraft 101.
Okay.
Right now, I'm getting my table's a mess. You can't see it because it's looking at me. Thank the gods. But right now, I'm getting ready for one of our maker classes where we'll be making what is known as a witch's ladder or a witch's rosary.
What is that?
What it is it's basically like the rosary that the Catholics use.
Okay.
But what ours is it has the 4 elements, the 13 moons, and the 12 Sabbats in it.
Okay.
So that's to help us remember when we're doing a spell, how many times we've done it, that kind of thing. It's also for mantras. If you want to say your mantra X amount of times, you know what you have as far as, counting with that string of beads.
Gotcha.
And they make them with, there's different stones that signify the elements, the Sabbats, the moons, and those kind of things.
Gotcha. So
I
how
also
long
do
have,
hand things.
oh, so now how long have you been doing this type of work?
I have been running, well, I opened Serum Witchery. Sorry, I had to do the math. Pardon me.
That's okay. That's okay.
It'll be 6 years in February.
Wow.
I got my brick and mortar. I rent my room from If the Broom Fits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going on my 3rd year in September of 2024. It'll be my 3rd year anniversary. So 2 years here now. I went from having half of a room to a whole room.
Right.
I do Reiki.
Right. Tell me about Reiki. Tell me
I do
about
Reiki
that.
a little bit different than other Reiki masters. So Reiki is the attendance and the attention to your chakra system. Now, your chakra system is basically your energetic system for your body. It's basically how the soul moves the energy through the body. That's the way I kind of like to present it to other people so they can get an idea of what it is.
Sure.
So in Reiki, what I do is I go in and I cleanse all the crap out of it. It's kind of like a house cleansing, but with chakras instead.
Right.
I do utilize my tuning forks though. And with my tuning forks, I have found that I can get into extra dimensions that the Reiki, I can't quite access through just Reiki, but with the tuning forks, I can access more.
Interesting.
So I do that. I also do crystal ball and tarot readings, end of life, hand fasting. I do animal communication, animal healing as well.
Tell me what hand fasting is. I'm not familiar with that term.
Hand fasting is our way of saying marriage. We look at hand fastings a little bit differently though. Now the state sees it totally different, just FYI.
Okay.
So if you get a marriage license when you get your hand fasting, it still works the same as regular marriages. You guys are both corporations that are merging to become a second corporation.
Okay.
And so therefore, if you've now merged the corporations. If you divorce, you have to unmerge the corporations.
Interesting.
So in a hand fasting, that's an agreement between two people. In our culture, if you're going to dedicate yourself to something, you do it for a year and a day.
Okay.
So in a hand fasting, you're committing yourself to your partner for a year and a day. You can go beyond the year and a day. It's not like, it's February 15th. Okay, so February 16th of next year, we're done. No, it means February 16th of next year, you're going to sit down and you're going to have, for lack of a better term, a come to Jesus meeting with your partner about, am I happy? Is this working? Is there anything we can do to change? Should we, are we working on ourselves? What are our goals for this year as a couple together? That's the year and the day. You can do it without the marriage certificate. Now, if you do it without the marriage license, it's not a legally recognized marriage in the state of Oregon. Okay. But if you do it with the marriage license, like when I hand fasted with my husband, we actually got the marriage license because we had to have proof that we were married.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Sure.
But if you're just doing it like my daughter, for example, she had a hand fasting, and then at a year and a day mark, she had her actual wedding.
Interesting.
So it could be like, it could say, this is what we're going to do during our engagement to see if it works.
So that's what initially what that is for, is like an engagement type of situation?
No, initially what it's for is a marriage.
Oh, okay.
They are partners. You jump over the broom. That signifies your new life together, because when you jump over a broom, it signifies a transformation and a change.
Okay.
And so you could do it that way. I've had people say, we don't want to jump the broom. We don't want to, like in hand fasting, instead of necessarily doing rings.
Right.
You can exchange rings. Yes, absolutely. But they hold their hands like this, and then you tie them with a hand fasting ribbon after they make their vows and stuff to each other, so that they are bound.
Okay,
to
so for
each other.
those that are just listening to us, can you describe
Right.
what you just demonstrated?
Sure. So I would take my left hand and put it on I would take my right hand and put it on my left forearm, and I'd take my left hand and put it on my right forearm.
So
So
you're kind
instead
of
of holding
locking arms
hands,
together.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're kind of interlocking your arms like the old Viking handshakes. They didn't just
Gotcha.
shake hands. That was their way of knowing that they had a friend because their hand went up closer to the elbow.
Right. Okay.
So
Very
it's
nice.
more, more of a clasped arms than necessarily
Well, and
hand.
it feels, to me, that feels more significant than just holding onto someone's fingers.
Yeah,
When you're holding their
exactly.
arm,
Because
you're
you've got a
connecting.
grasp on them up
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
There's more meat to hold on to.
Gotcha.
So, but then you tie the cord, and that signifies the marriage of the two. And then,
Nice.
of course, if you have the certificate, then after the ceremony and the ritual, then you would have everybody sign the paperwork and so on and so forth.
Nice. So I definitely will put some links in for people to get a hold of you if they want to work on something like that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I do
so
stuff online as well as in person. So either
okay.
way.
So tell me, what about the paranormal amazes you?
God, there's so much. The depth and breadth of what we don't know.
Okay.
The amazement when you learn something new because you have a ghost that's actually willing to like inform you.
Right.
Like, oh, we don't do that here. Okay, what do you mean you don't do that here? Explain that more. When
Yeah.
you get one of those, most of them are like, yes, no, they're not really talkative. But every once in a while, you'll find one that is there to just be in customer service representative or basically like a tour guide,
Customer
We do
service
this
ghost.
here,
I
we
love
do
it.
this here. That's it, kind of think of like Beetlejuice when the guy like gave
Yes.
him the tour of the back end of,
Yes.
the
That's a
social
great
work.
example. I love that.
So I like meeting those tour guides because usually they're pretty friendly,
Yeah.
and they really do want to share info. I'm really amazed at how the living technology is starting to catch up to the
Yes.
fact that the non-living can actually interact with stuff. When I get a lot of glitches, the first thing I look at is Mercury in retrograde. If it's not, and it's not in the shadow of retrograde, which can give you some electrical problems,
Right.
I look for solar flares. That can cause real problems with electronics as well. So if those three things aren't happening, then I know I can go to the paranormal and say, okay, you want to talk to me through my computer? Let me set up a Word document and you can play with it all you want.
That's great.
I'm really excited to see how technology is catching up, and there's more like the God helmet that's been used recently.
What is that?
By Jason.
Let's explain that to people. What is that?
Oh, the God helmet was developed by one of the people on one of the ghost shows. It was I know his first name's Jason. Everybody calls him Jay, but I can't remember his last name.
Okay.
Anyway, one of his guys is really like into like physics and stuff like he's kind of like Egon on
Okay,
Ghostbusters.
gotcha.
He likes to build stuff, right?
Okay.
So this God helmet, they can put it on, and what it does is it changes the frequency of the brain where they can start hearing and actually like audibly hearing things and visually with the ocular nerve seeing things that normally the eyes and the ears can't hear. But because of the way that the helmet is reconfiguring the electronics in the way that our neural pathways interpret it, actually give us the hearing and the seeing that I might have as a psychic on a normal day.
Correct.
This God helmet can give these people.
That's amazing.
Jack Osborne has been known to use a God helmet as well on some of his as well. So I would love to try out the God helmet. I think that would for me, that would be like, let me see if what I'm seeing psychically in my third eye is the same as what is actually like going on,
Right. Right.
Even us in the paranormal, every once in a while, we want confirmation that we're not nuts either.
Well, it's kind of a fun geek out thing. I spoke with someone at the winter festival we were just at, about tarot cards and different energies with different tarot cards and all that.
Yes.
And we were both kind of giggling about our different favorite cards. And I said, look at us, we're geeking out on tarot. And she started laughing and she said, wow, we can geek out on tarot. And I said, exactly. It's very fun. And I love that there's such a plethora of examples and things to read now. And it's not in the corner of the library anymore. It's at Powell Books, and it's out, there's stuff out in the open daylight for people to research. I love it.
Well, and part of that too, I don't know if you're aware, but the Mayan year 2000 prediction, okay?
Yeah.
One of the things I did a ritual for 2012. And I did a Mayan ritual. So I did very deep delving into the Mayan, even though I am not culturally Mayan. Okay. I felt that it was important to honor their calendar because, we were all worried about Y2K, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so I did a real deep dive into the Mayan philosophy. And one of the things that was predicted with this was that technology would catch up with other dimensions.
Wow.
And through our technology, we would be able to see, hear, and perceive things that were never available to anyone that was not a shaman.
Interesting.
And so that's part of the prediction that I've seen. I do also give a lot of credit for the fact that psychicness, ghost, paranormal, the fact that it's well received is Hollywood. Now I say that for the paranormal, not for witches.
Right.
That's a whole different ball of wax.
Yes, very true.
Okay. So we're talking about the paranormal.
Right.
That has made it very normal. Poltergeist, for example. I remember Poltergeist from when I was a kid, okay?
Of course.
So it's the indigo children movement as well, because the indigos don't have that screen over their pineal gland, that third eye.
Okay.
And so because it's more open, we're more like, oh yeah, no, that's, and, and people who don't believe in it are like, but, and they're like, no, it's there.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe us, that's fine. But there are less skeptics. It's kind of like when the government come out with aliens are real.
Yeah, I know.
And everybody was like this. Everybody's like, great. What are you going to do about rental prices?
Right. No.
We've been desensitized. Aliens, paranormal, anything like that. Science fiction.
Yes.
We've kind of been desensitized by Hollywood for this stuff.
I think
when the government came out going, there are aliens, everybody's like,
okay.
And?
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And so I think for us with the paranormal, I think it was the Gen Xers and those indigo children going, no, this is normal. This is how it works.
Right.
Because we were more willing to open up our minds and be willing to look at other things that didn't necessarily go along with how we were raised or the culture that we were brought up in. And I was brought up in a very colonialized white family because that's what we are.
Right.
We don't have any BIPOC people. We didn't until my brother got married.
Yeah.
We didn't have any BIPOC people in our family. So we could only understand what we learned from our families and friends who were of different cultures and different nationalities and different traditions.
Okay.
So like I had a friend who loved one of my mom's really good friends loved me because she was Mexican and she knew I could see spirits.
Nice.
And to her and their culture, a person who could do what I could do was a curandera, a healer. And so she would come to me and ask me just quick questions and like, well, what kind of fruit do they want for Dia de Muertos? And I was like, apples and oranges.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it sounded like a dumb... but we were living in Southern California where you could get bananas and peaches and pears no matter what time of year.
Right.
And so at the younger age, I didn't realize what she was asking me.
Right.
Until later on after she passed, my mom explained to me as I was an adult, do you remember when? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, she like honored you, honey, because she thought you were a curandera. She thought you were a healer, and you were there to give her a message from her family.
Right.
And so, you know, some of the stuff that I was exposed to, I thought was just everyday, everybody did it type
Right.
thing.
Right.
Until I got out into the real world, and I was like, not everybody does this. Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. So
I hope
what
that answers the
inspires
question.
you? Yeah, yes, very good. Tell me what inspires you in the paranormal. What about the paranormal inspires you?
Being able to help people communicate, being able to help the non-living or the living adjacent, as your friends so politely asked to be called.
Right.
I like helping them just as much, because sometimes they're stuck because of a process that they need to go through, that until they go through it, they can't feel comfortable with crossing over or
Right.
moving on to the next plane, or however your spiritual practice teaches you what happens after they move on.
Right. Right. That's good.
So,
yeah, I actually have found that there's still, or I guess still, there always has been a large population of the beyond that remains in need of help. And so
absolutely.
I've come to kind of quantify what I do is I'm like a ghost worker,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of what I do is just listening and helping them sort out some things. That's why I've told my listeners I have so many ghost stories. I have so many. I turned 60 in 2 weeks. And I can tell you, it's been a lifetime of stories. And I am so grateful to get to talk publicly about all this with so many neat people like yourself, and get to just hear what you've gone through. And, you know, I did know that there were people in my family that were like me, but like you, it was a little weird to realize, oh, I can't say that in public. I can't tell that person their aunt's trying to touch them. And I can't tell that person there's 3 people standing behind them that are trying to rub their shoulders because they know they're upset. Or, you know, these things were beautiful to me and amazing and loving, not scary. And I did find that the spirit world was so vast, so much bigger than I saw the physical world to be. I think that was one of my, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
But not only that, but it is so full of power that we humans have that we have no clue that we can tap into.
Agreed.
It's just, it's such a plethora of abilities. And I mean, you know, apparition, for example, making one thing disappear from another and appear in another.
Right.
Ghosts have that down pat.
Yes.
Well, if I could apparate, I'd be saving myself a whole lot on travel charges. I'm just saying.
So I have a great story I'll share with you. I have a gentleman friend that when he was 3 years old in the South, he lived 100 miles from his relatives. And so they didn't see each other very often. But he had a favorite auntie and uncle that he just loved. But they would, you know, holidays or birthdays, maybe one would drive to the other, whatever. And this one afternoon, he told his mom, I'm going to go see auntie and uncle. And they said, not today. And he disappeared. And not long after, like less than an hour went by, they couldn't find him anywhere. They looked everywhere. You can see where this is going. So, so they got a phone call from auntie and uncle and said, how did he get here? And so that was like the family, whoa. They still, to this day, no one can explain how he got from where they lived to auntie and uncle's house. And he doesn't remember anything other than he was thinking about them and he really wanted to see them. And then they were just there. That's all he remembers.
Yeah. I have a grandchild that apparated the cookie jar off of the top of the refrigerator into their lap while mommy and Nana were taking showers. And we knew there was no way for this child to get to this cookie jar. I mean, none.
Right.
I mean, there's no way. There was no stool around. There were no chairs anywhere near it.
Right.
She didn't have drawers to pull out to climb on top. I mean, it was on top of the refrigerator. I could barely reach it, okay?
Right.
But we both came out of our shower, cookie jar on her lap.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, children, especially before the age of 5.
Yes.
They have no filters. They haven't been told that's not real.
Or that they can't.
Or that we don't, humans can't do that. And the minute that they're told a human can't do that is the minute that boundary gets placed on them, and they know that that'll never happen again.
Right.
And so when I used to ask my dad, well, can I move things with my mind? He's like, sure. The more you practice, the better it'll happen.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, of course, you know, telling an ADD child, yeah, sit there and stare at it. It'll help. My dad knew what he was doing. He wasn't stupid.
Right.
He also did believe that there was no limit to the brain and that we humans only understand a quarter of what our brain is capable of.
Right. I agree.
So to him, if you want to move something with your mind, if you think you can and you have the ability to do it, the more you practice, the better you can.
Yes. So I have a fun story I'll share with you about moving things that you might really appreciate. So someone I know had a psychic reading many years ago, and they were told that they were part of a group of people that were in Egypt moving the pyramids and building them with their minds. And that they worked in groups of 6, and that they literally levitated those enormous stones and built them. That there were people that orchestrated like in a giant orchestra. There would be someone telling them where to go, basically, and they would all meditate together in a circle and focus their thoughts, and the stones went where they belonged. And I thought that's the most, even now, that makes more sense than all of the other scientific examples of explanations of how those were even put together.
There are Tibetan monks that can sculpt through sound with their voice and lift stones and sculpt the stones while it's floating in midair.
I had not heard that. I believe it, though. I believe it.
So my husband has actually talked to a Buddhist monk who can actually do that.
I believe it.
So I know it's possible because I also work with sound. And sound can be used to put out a fire. Sound can be used to destroy a village, level it.
Well, sound is used to destroy cancer in certain instances.
Yes, but it's
used for all kinds of things.
But the military has also weaponized it. So during the Black Lives Movement here in Portland, they actually came out with those Humvees with those huge speakers on the top of them.
Okay.
And that's what they were for. If at
Interesting.
any point the group started to rush, if you hit a low enough tone, it will liquefy the organs in your body. And they had absolutely zero problem with doing that if they started getting attacked by a mob.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen one of those.
Anytime you see a Humvee coming towards your area with huge speakers on the top, run.
Interesting.
Because it's meant to do damage. That's what that is.
Wow.
It's meant to do damage at that point.
That's spooky.
That's one of the reasons it kind of concerns me with those kids with their bass that's vibrating so hard that it sounds like the car's going to fall apart.
Yes.
Sooner or later, if they hit a low tone that's low enough, they could actually explode some of their organs in their body. I mean,
I have not heard this before. Wow.
Yeah, tone can actually it can not only heal, it can destroy.
Well, that makes sense. Else. Well, you know what that makes me think of when you say that is an avalanche.
Absolutely.
How is it possible that an echo of sound could make snow break apart and fall?
Mm-hmm.
That seems crazy to me. But if I hadn't seen it, I've seen that. And it's awe-inspiring that this ton of snow can be disturbed and move from its resting spot, because snow's fairly heavy, and to have it just break apart and fall is incredible.
Well, and avalanches actually are caused by sound vibrating the
Yes.
air pockets in the snow,
Isn't
which
that crazy?
Causes it to release,
Right.
which causes the avalanche. So again, sound can be just as destructive as healing can be.
Yes. Well,
So,
and then my husband is a musician. So we've been
mhm,
talking a lot about the 432. So most
mhm,
music, for people that don't know this, is at a tonality level of 440. That's what's
right.
commonly used. But
Mm,
there are some songs and some music that's at 432, and it's actually a different tuning for instruments.
mhm,
If you go to Spotify, they actually have a 432 song list, and it's songs that have been modified to be in that tonality. Now, people will say, and even in science, I've heard references to this, they call that a heavenly tone because it's
mhm,
actually healing to the body. It
mhm.
calms people, it's soothing, it actually restores disruptions in thought and disruptions in body healing and sources. And so just listening to it actually helps you to feel
Binaural
better.
beats,
Yes.
as well
Oh,
will do
yeah.
the same thing. Binaural beats actually helps the brain.
Yeah.
And it helps the brain to process it and also to um, take it in so that it can modify it and use it in a healing way. Binaural beats are really great. I will play stuff with beats as I'm doing my tuning fork therapy and as I'm doing
Nice.
my healing, because I know that sound can help with opening up those further dimensions so that I can get into
Yeah.
all of the dimensions to
I
heal.
think that's great. I
Yeah.
think that's great, especially for people that have had trauma. I think that
Mhm.
would absolutely be a wonderful way to deal with that.
So I do stuff like that, and then I use those during my healing sessions or my Reiki sessions, or if I'm doing a reading or something like that.
Nice. Okay, so I
So,
got one more question for you. So
sure.
when it comes to the paranormal subject in general, what
Yes.
are you most curious about these days? You've done, and I say this because for people that are just sticking their toe in the water in the paranormal and they're starting to consider that maybe ghosts are real, or maybe there's a Bigfoot, or I think I saw a UFO, and maybe other things are real too. And that's a big wow for your
Yes.
mind. So you've
Yes.
been in this realm for most of your adult life, your childhood. That's a long
54
time.
years.
Right.
Hmm.
And so at this stage of the game, being this far involved in the paranormal world, what are you curious about nowadays? What do you think about? What do you wonder about?
Um, I would like to know more about uh how they utilize energy. How is it they save that up? How is it that they can use that energy to push a button, but they can't slam a door shut? how how much energy would it take to slam a door? We know that heavy doors take a tremendous amount of energy because, well, you and I do it and we're like, oh, I mean,
Right.
that's a lot of energy. But does that equal out to what energy is like to them?
Are you talking about ghosts? Is that what you were
Yes.
first? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
like if we look at the human realm and we look at the living adjacent realm,
Okay.
okay, when they say energy, are they talking about the same vocabulary word we are? How
Yeah.
does it work for them? This is
Right.
how it works in the physical body, but how does it work
Right.
energetically with no body to comprise that energy
Right.
into something?
Right.
I would really like to find out more about how that side works, how that dimension works as far
Yeah.
as when they store up energy. Do they have like a little battery that goes full and then they're like, okay, now I can type?
Right. So
Is
have you?
that what's going on?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Have you ever seen this show? I think it's on CBS called Ghosts. Have you ever watched that?
Yeah, I watched the BBC version. I like it a
Yes.
whole lot better. The
Yes.
American version, it really dumbed it down to a
Yeah.
point where I was like, I can't watch this. Um, but the BBC version, I was like, oh my God, this is my life.
Well, I was tickled by when you are talking about touching buttons, when the one ghost figured out how to type on the computer keyboard, and it took
Mhm.
so much effort to get those. Because I've wondered the same thing. And I know as a human being in a body, we have our brain and our heart that make electricity. So, how do they recharge?
Yeah.
And so, when I have asked that question of other energies, what I've been told is a couple of things. One is they draw energy from other things into
Mhm.
themselves, and
Yep.
that there's actual locations where, for example, when they want to go somewhere, they use locations that are set up and arranged for transport.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like an elevator to wherever you want to go, or an escalator.
I kind of thought of them as the little like tubes.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get in a library or whatever. Right.
Yeah, like,
and so
you just get in the tube and it takes you where you want to go, Willy Wonka style.
Right. Because a lot of living adjacents have shared with me that it's so hard to talk even. It's hard to visit and chat. And so they take a break and get away from us because they want to connect, but it's so hard, especially with someone that doesn't hear them.
Right.
When someone is not tuned into their psychic availability and they're trying to leave them a penny or their feather or move the keys, get any kind of acknowledgement. And I love that. But they get worn out. And I also love, and I'm sure you've encountered this because I find this delightful and cute. Ghosts that hang around their families oftentimes will brag in the afterlife about, they hear me. My niece knows when I'm in the room and blah, 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 blah. And they love it. And then there's the ones that are like, it's been 10 years. I am so tired. I've been trying to reach them. They never think it's me. They always think it's something else. And it's like, I'm so sorry.
I'm like, could you just convince them? And I'm like, look.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't listen to you, why are they going to listen to me?
Right.
I'm a stranger to them. It's like, here's a paranormal story for you. This is a great one.
Okay.
I got sent in to do an interpreting job at a hospital.
Okay. Explain what you do for interpreting, please.
In my previous career, before this became my job, I was an interpreter for the deaf. So I was an ASL interpreter. Okay. So I would be sent to certain medical facilities for appointments to interpret what the doctor was saying to the deaf person and vice versa.
Right.
And so I get to the VA and they're doing a whole bunch of construction. So of course this wing's closed and that wing's open and this wing's closed and that wing's open. Great. I just want the audiology department.
Right.
The reception is like, well, I'm really new, but I think that's down in the basement. And I'm in that moment, the thought that ran through my head is, there ain't nothing but the morgue in the basement, baby girl. You are not sending me to the morgue.
Right.
And I just smiled and I said, I'm looking for the audiology appointment. The VA has to test this person to prove that, they were born deaf. They are still deaf now that they're 78.
Right.
And so I'm just looking for the audiology booths because, they have those booths,
Right. Yeah.
She's like, no, I know they're down in the basement. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, boy.
So I went down in the basement. Sure enough, there are no audiology booths in the basement. Of course. There are plenty of empty morgue boards, according to the open doors when I walked in.
Oh, boy.
So I walked in and I'm like, oh, God, this is not the audiology department. And as I'm walking down, of course, I'm in the morgue, so I'm surrounded by spirits now.
Of course.
And you get a hold of this person. I need you to do blah, 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 blah.
Right.
This old man shuffles up to me and he goes, you have to get a hold of my wife. So in my head, because I can't necessarily have an outward discussion with all of these because someone's going to walk by and think that I have escaped from the mental ward.
Oh, yeah. You've lost your mind. Right.
Yeah. So in my head, I'm like, dude, I can't help you right now. I am like not here for this. And he's like, no, you have to. This is vital. She won't be able to find anything, including my will. You have to get her this message. Fine. All right. So I walk up to the woman at the receptionist in the morgue and I said, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm Aine Sullivan. I am here for a audiology appointment at this time. And she goes, well, first of all, you're 30 minutes early, which is really awesome. She goes, secondly, I don't know why you were sent down here. There's no audiology down here. This is the morgue. And I'm like, apparently. I'm like, look, all right. Can you tell me where the audiology department is? 5th floor, left wing, blah, blah, gives me directions, right? I'm like, okay, thank you. And I'm like, look, one more thing before I got to go. You're going to think I'm nuts. Because most people do when you approach them with this stuff.
Absolutely.
I said, look, I'm really sorry. I know you're going to think I'm nuts, but the gentleman in that room right there, the door is kind of open, but not. He's balding. Of course, I can't see the body. I can only see the
Right.
apparition of the man who is
Yes.
talking to me.
Yes.
I'm like, he's balding. He's got a really large nose, very long. I mean, he was like 90 something when he died. I mean,
Wow.
He was an old man. Okay.
Gotcha.
And I was like, I gave her, and the more I say the description, the more pale the woman is becoming.
Yeah, I bet.
And
oh my gosh.
So finally, I'm like, look, do you have his wife's phone number? And she goes, well, yeah. And I'm like, great. He really wants her to know that in the den, in the desk, on the right-hand drawer, pull it out, lift the drawer up, a false bottom's going to pop out.
Interesting.
When that false bottom pops out, inside are security deposit keys, safety deposit keys from a bank. In there are the will, the living will, the deed of the house, the title to the cars, blah, 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 blah. So she's looking at me sheet white, but because I just described this person who passed no less than 45 minutes ago, description that I have not seen yet, because again, door's closed.
Right.
And so she like, hello? So we found a note in your husband's pocket. And now me on the other side of the desk is going,
oh yeah, great. That works.
anything, as long as she gets the message, I don't care.
Yes. I don't care how she hears it.
Standing in front of me.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I'm listening quite as well. So she tells her all the information that I just told her.
Right.
And she pulls the phone away from her because the woman's so excited, she's screaming.
Oh.
She has decimated the entire den looking for these keys.
Oh, wow.
And that's exactly what she was looking for.
Oh, cool.
So when she called, she pulled the drawer out, pulled it up, and when it pulled up, the false bottom came out and all the stuff came out.
Nice.
She started screaming in excitement.
Right.
I'm so glad my husband left those instructions on that paper on his pocket. Can you go ahead and burn that so nobody else can find it?
Yeah.
Now, again, the couple, they were easily in their late 80s, early 90s.
Sure.
Okay. So it was easy for us to get he probably wrote it on the note in his pocket so he wouldn't forget.
Right.
Because saying to him, okay, well, your dead husband's standing here next to me. That's not going to go over well.
Right. Of course. That'd be too much.
So that's a whole, those are other, I mean, I get messages all the time, things that make people cry.
Yes.
If you ever come to a gallery reading, I try to always have Kleenex because you never know.
Right.
When the tears might start, type of thing. So.
I love that. That's a great story. I'm glad you shared that, Anya. That is so fun.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Because genuinely, we all have stuff that we're in the middle of doing when death happens. Most of the time. Sometimes we get a nice graceful passing and get to go slowly and we're aware and prepared. But a lot of people pass abruptly.
Yes.
And without a lot of warning. And that's where psychics come in handy for a lot of these things. And
I love people who are skeptical up until I say something.
Yeah.
And then their mouth drops to the floor. Their eyes are as big as saucers.
Yeah.
And then this is always my favorite. They're like, how did you know that?
Yeah.
Psychic.
Yeah.
I'm a psychic. I'm going to know things. I mean, like at the gallery reading that you attended recently, one of them got a message from their grandmother to go help Mama in the garden.
Yes. They
came up to me later after we were all said and done with tears in their eyes because Mama has been trying to get them in the garden.
Oh, I love it.
And so Grandma was just kind of reconfirming that.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to do that. You need to spend time with your mom in the garden.
Nice.
And so sometimes I don't even get confirmation that I've hit the nail on the head.
Right.
Until long after. Or my favorite is, remember when you gave me my reading?
Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite things that I tell people is write down what I say because I'm not going to remember all the details later.
And not only that, they come up to you like you remember everything. It's like,
yes.
What's nice for me is I can use my interpreting background kind of as a way. It comes in, it goes out, and it's no longer mine.
Right, exactly.
So for me, it's just another form of interpreting.
Right.
But I mean, I've had people go, remember when?
Yeah.
And you'll see me, and you'll always know when it's a program, because I'll go, oh yeah,
No.
I've seen 375 people since your reading.
Right. Yeah.
Half of those I gave their own readings to.
Yes.
I can't. There are some times when something is, oh my God, mind blowing, and it will leave an impression. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I have that as well. But most of the time it's a blur.
Yeah, and you're like, sure. I'm glad it worked out for you, because I don't remember.
Yeah.
Not because I don't want to, but because it's almost, when I'm doing that in between of being a psychic and a medium and giving messages and stuff, I'm almost interpreting. So that's not my information to keep.
Right.
So my brain's like, oh, we don't need that anymore. Oh, we don't need that anymore.
Right.
When in all actuality, we might need it.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I gotta say, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love it.
Of course.
I'll have to have you come back and talk about some more of the stuff that you do. But
I would love that.
This is a fun share time. Well, I don't get to talk with other psychics very often, and when I do, it is a delight. It really, really is. And especially someone that's been a psychic as long as I have. You're a rare treasure for me, my dear, because...
Oh, well, thank you. You're a rare treasure for me, too.
Genuinely, because it's like a couple of old gals sitting back and go, did you do this or did you hear that? And I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Because we have stories that people wouldn't believe. And it's like, I don't know why I have unauthorized access to things that I have no business knowing, but I know that I know. And if it helps somebody else, awesome. Right. Well, and I genuinely remember one of my siblings in particular just calling BS on me constantly. I would say something and he would go, how do you know that? You don't know that. You're only 5, or you're only 9, or you're just 13. You don't know. And it's like, but I do. Actually, I do. Yeah.
Well, when your spirit guide is an 84-year-old unalive person who's decided they're going to help you, I have a whole lot of information than you do, 14-year-old.
Right, exactly. It's so funny. It's just funny. I just love it. Well, again, my thanks. This was very fun. Thank you very much for coming and talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and for all our listeners, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for listening and or watching. And from Holly's Pandorium, and Aine Sullivan, have a very good day, and we'll see you again soon.
Blessed be.
If you'd like to reach Aine Sullivan, you can find her online at www.serenewitchery.com, and that is spelled SerenWitchery.com. You can also find her on Facebook or Instagram at Serene Witchery, or you can call her on the phone at area code 503-999-9390. Again, to reach Aine Sullivan, www.serenewitchery.com, Facebook or Instagram, or call her. Thank you for listening.